Thanks for joining us or watching the replay. Tonight is February 21st, and we are doing our January photo time. And based on some feedback I got last month, we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into developing your own personal photo process. This is something we talked about back in November of 2022, and some people asked to kind of circle back, dive a little bit deeper. So tonight I am going to be doing that, but I'm here with my co-host. Colleen is with us, and Cheryl has something else going on tonight, so she's not with us, but the three of us are consistently creative crew together. So let's get started. So tonight I have broken it down into kind of two sections. One, I'm going to talk about some information, define some things, specify our overall goal, as well as some of the most important things. And then I'm going to go into the workshop part where I provided a handout for you to write some things down. And I'll be discussing some of that as we move a little bit farther forward. So when I talk about photo process, and again, if you were with us a while ago when we discussed this, I'm talking about whatever happens to your photo once you take it. Is it backed up? Is it printed? Do you edit it? Is it shared with people? Is it organized? Is it tagged? So it's any of these, all of these, some of these, whatever your photo process happens to be. And for most of us, I think the ultimate goal is to have our best full res photos that are backed up, they're organized, they're easily searchable and we can find things. They've been edited to the best of what we want them to be, and they can be shared from now on and into the future. But thinking about it carefully, it is a ton of work, and it might really be unreasonable to do everything and to do everything perfectly. So the first thing to recognize is, do you really have to do it all? And the answer to that is no. To do this, if it was a full-time job, you might be able to keep up with it. At least some of us take so many photos. This would be really a lot of time invested into doing this. So I wanted to zero in on what I think the two most important things are. Now, this is my personal opinion, but I think it will be true for most people. The first thing is backups. So everything else that you do is inconsequential if your backup gets lost. If it's corrupted, if the device fails, your cloud service provider loses your photos. It really doesn't matter if they're the best photos you've ever taken and they're perfectly edited. It just doesn't matter if they're gone. The second thing is, okay, you can have the greatest backups, but if you can't find anything, it really doesn't matter if you have access to it or not. So in my opinion, the two most important things when we're talking about your photos and this process is first the backups, and second, how findable things are. So thinking about backups, I want to just refresh your memory. We've talked about backup strategies before. The things that we're trying to focus on is that if you create redundancy, you're going to minimize the risk of losing your data. And in this case, we're talking about photos and videos. And it also increases the chances of recovering your information in case something unexpected happens. You know, there are natural disasters, there are fires in homes, there are technology failures of hard drives and external hard drives, and cloud storages get corrupted, they lose data. You just don't know what's going to happen. So the development of a standard strategy for this has been around for quite a while, and it's a best practice for data management for all things, but we really talk about it for the most important things that we have, our most important documents, our most important memories, and our photos. And that is abbreviated as this 3-2-1 backup strategy. So the 3-2-1 backup strategy is if you have 3 copies of your data, so that's your original plus 2 backups, and they're on 2 media types. So if you have 1 external hard drive and you put all 3 copies of those on 1 external hard drive, that's really not considered 3 separate media. So you really want them on different devices. And you want to have 1 copy stored in a different location than the rest of them. Because again, if you have a flood or a fire or tornado or something else, if everything's all in the one building, you might lose everything. And my addition is that it has to be easily maintained or we don't do it. So that's thinking about backups. So now let's think about how we find our photos. So finding your photos is based on your level of organization and what you're doing. So I've included a lot of things under this very broad topic of organizing, but not all of these are applicable to everyone. They're not all applicable to every photo that you have. So, but I'm including them just for like a big overview. Things like deleting duplicates, editing photos, using albums and or tagging to help with finding your photos later, renaming photos. There's also these live photos on Apple devices, and I believe they're also available on Androids, where they're a really short video and you can actually select the best image out of there. There are some people who like to do that and get rid of all the rest of them. There's many others that could go into this list, but it's a kind of a broad listing, I think. But again, do you have to do everything for all photos? And the answer is no. Your best level of organization is what you need to do with the time that you have that meets your requirements of being able to find the things that you want when you need them. So I don't think everybody needs to do everything. I don't think everybody needs to do everything with every group of photos that they have. So you kind of have to find what works for you. So right now I want to go over to your handout, and so I've shared this PDF on via both email, and it's also on our Facebook page. And I'm going to be starting to talk about this. But at the top, you can put your name in the blank before personal photo process. So I would put Kari's personal photo process, and I would put the date over here on the upper right-hand side. All right. So circling back to the two most important things, backing up and finding. So backups cost money, and finding, you have to have some level of organization to find things. But again, that takes time. So there's always a trade-off. So can you afford the cost to back everything you have up versus can you afford to spend all the time it's going to take to organize everything the way you want? These are kind of the fundamental trade-offs that you have to make as you're doing this. So here's your questions. So question number 1, can you invest the money to back up everything, even though all your photos are not perfectly organized yet? And 2, can you invest the time to get everything perfectly organized before getting your photos backed up? And by perfectly organized, I'm referring to grouping all those things like deleting duplicates, cropping, editing, tagging, etc. So fundamentally, when you're developing your process, which process you're going to use is going to depend on your answer to these two questions. So if you're saying yes to question 1 and you're going to back up everything, I have on your sheet process option 1. Step number 1 in this is going to be back up all your photos on a recurring schedule, and we're going to have you fill out information about that. You're going to organize to get to whatever your definition of perfectly organized is. And then 3rd, once you have your photos perfectly organized, and if you've identified the best of the best, mark those as being done. If you're preserving them for the future, then you can do that. So that's the first option. The second option is if you said yes to question 2 was about organizing things first. So organizing to get to your definition of perfectly organized. But just recall, if you don't have good backups while you're working on it, it is possible you can lose some photos at some point during this process, and you have to only you can decide if that's okay or not. And then back up all your photos. So on your sheet, you have this, if you're on process option 1, you're gonna fill out the top part of this page. So what I'd like you to do is take a few moments to write down how you're going to back things up. What are you doing? Remember, we want to include 3 copies, 2 devices, 1 offsite location, and how frequently. And on the handout, I've given you some lines. And then step 2 is going to be what steps are important to you that you want to do. It may not be all of these. It may only be 1 or 2 of these. If you've chosen option number 2 of organizing first, you're going to go onto the bottom half of the sheet. In step 1, you're going to identify the steps you're going to take to get perfectly organized. And then step 2, you're going to write down the information about your backing up. So I think at this point in time, I am actually going to pause the recording. If I can ask Colleen to press pause. And so we can have a discussion here with the people who are here. And then we'll resume the recording in a little bit. All right, so we just had a really good discussion about some of the items on this worksheet. We talked a lot about what we consider to be important in our perfectly organized process. And, there's part of me now that says we should have recorded it because there was a lot of really good insight. However, I don't know that everybody would want to share all of that, but there were a lot of good things to talk about here. And obviously, if you're sitting here watching the recording and you have questions or something that doesn't make sense, or you want to just have somebody else to bounce an idea off of, feel free to reach out. We also had discussions about backing up, and backing up is definitely a kind of a pinch point for people. It's hard to maintain multiple copies of all your photos on different devices. We know we should do it, but it is hard. It is definitely a process that we need to work towards, and everybody is at a different place on this, and everybody's working towards this. So I think we'll keep on talking about this as time moves forward. So we will kind of wrap up here and then be able to have people have a little bit of work time. But I wanted to wrap up the recording. So a couple of things, call to action for people. So I created a Google form for some feedback. It is on the worksheet. I will post it when I post everything about the recording, and I'll share it in the chat with the people who are here this evening. And if you would fill that out, I would really appreciate it. It'll give me an insight into how helpful this was and what we can do next month and what you can need help with. And the second thing is to just keep making progress. A little bit of progress, even, a couple of times a week, goes a long way at the end of the year. And the third thing I wanted to point out is I really want to encourage everybody to register for Forever's Family History event because it's free. It's this Saturday. And if you register, you get access to the recordings and you'll have that access forever. And I wanted to share the agenda because there are a couple of things on the agenda that I think are really interesting. So it's noon to 3 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. And again, if you can't attend live, it's okay. It's going to be recorded. You could listen to them later on. And the way they do it is they record each individual session independently. So if you decide you want to just watch one, you can do that. One that I really think is interesting is this ways to organize your Forever account, because there are so many ways in which to organize your Forever account. They're going to be sharing a number of different ideas, and I saw some stuff on a training today, which was really amazing to me about how they were sharing and how they were organizing the things in their account, which kind of opened my eyes to some other possibilities. So I think there's going to be some really great things shared on Saturday. There's also some things about how to share with others about privacy settings and things like that. And then, since it is Family History Month, there's going to be things about restoring and colorizing old photos, genealogy services, as well as create and print items. So it's going to be a really interesting day. I know the people who've been working on this have been hard at work, so it's definitely worth it to take a look and you get to that. You can get through it through the link here, but it's also, if you go to forever.com and click on the deals, it's right near the top. I think it's the second item in the top row. So if you haven't registered for that, register for that. And as long as you do it by Saturday, they'll send you an email with the links. I think it'll be a really good event. So again, things that I can do to help you. I'm trying to provide some times to work as well as some times to plan. Every other Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. My next Zoom is this Friday, so in 2 days. It's normally, I also do the first Wednesday each month here with Colleen and Cheryl. It's been a little bit, the schedule's been a little bit shifted because I've had travel on the first Wednesdays of the month, so we've had different times, but I think we're going to get back to the first Wednesdays of the month. But if you still need something else and you want to work on it, let me know. And I am doing a Zoom crop this Sunday from 1 to 4. So I'll be working on my stuff then. So again, if I can help you with any tech questions, help on organizing, accountability, a lot of the people who are here this evening joined us last month, and I've been checking in with the accountability. And one of them even said at the beginning, now that you're checking in with me, I'm actually doing some of these things. So that's good. I need to be accountable too to people. So hopefully I can help you out with that. And I want to just, before I close it all up, anybody have any additional questions that we should catch on the recording? All right. So I'm going to say thank you so much for your time. If you've watched the recording, we appreciate any comments or any feedback that you have for everybody who's here. I really appreciate your time this evening. The conversation has been wonderful, and I thank you for being here. Have a good
Thanks.
night. We'll see you next
Thanks,
week.
Kari. Good class.
Thank you, Kari.
Good job.